Thank you very much for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here today. As already mentioned, my name is Ulrik Krasilnikov, and I'm CEO of Curasight, and I will, together with co-founder and CSO Professor Andreas Kjær, give you a deeper insight in this exciting investment case. So what is Curasight actually about? We are a Danish company founded back in 2013, based on more than 10 years of research, among others based on research from Andreas Kjær. And we have developed a uTrace platform, which is used within imaging in several cancer types, meaning that we can visualize the cancer disease. Right now it's tested in 8 ongoing or completed phase 2 clinical trials. And recently we have comprised or finalized head and neck cancer and also neuroendocrine tumors, and very soon we also hope that we could release the results from the brain cancer study. uTrace has been tested in more than 450 patients, and by that proven to be safe, meaning that it's already also a very de-risked case. And furthermore, we tap into a rapidly growing market. I'll come back to that, but it is expected to increase rapidly with a fivefold within the next 8 to 10 years. Furthermore, we have a very strong IP position. We use quite a lot of resources and efforts to strengthen our IP positions. It doesn't make sense if you have a very good technology if you're not able to also to utilize it commercialized. Recently, or in October 2020, we went on the Spotlight stock market, where we raised around 95 million Danish crown for, first of all, conducting the phase 3 trial within imaging study in brain cancer, and also pursuing the uTreat option, also in brain cancer. And furthermore, we also will pursue the prostate cancer study. This is just to give you some highlights since the IPO. First of all, we are very proud that we got awarded with 2 prizes from the IPO guide. One for the quality of the and quality of the process of the IPO, and also for the company, and then also for the stock price development. If we don't have to look at this year, because that has really been challenging for all companies, I would say. But actually, we are also strengthening our IP position with the issue of patents both in US and EU, both within the uTreat and uTrace. And furthermore, we have initiated commercial research with SEB and Capital Partner. This is just to give you an idea of why is Curasight interesting, and also the nuclear medicine market is actually growing rapidly. And that is, Andreas will come back to that also. But it is really a new technology within how to treat and detect cancer diseases. One of the growth factors is, among others, aging population, about that also causing increasing number of cancer diseases. Furthermore, we are more and more using wider use of nuclear medicine in the world. And furthermore, introduction of new radiopharmaceuticals like uTreat and uTrace is also increasing the market.
Yeah, and then I will talk a little bit about the technology and our proprietary theranostic platform. And theranostic is the words of therapy and diagnostics. Is based on a target called UPAR, which is a marker of aggressiveness in cancer. I come back to that. And we have uTrace that can diagnose that marker, and we have uTreat that can go in and do local radiation therapy on the same target. The 2 things together is called theranostics, and the nice thing about that is with the imaging you can predict where the therapy goes, because it's 2 versions of the same molecule. So if nothing is taken up by the tumor on the imaging part, there's no way to proceed with the therapy. And this is really what we call, or this is really living personalized medicine. Yeah. And if you take the next. What is unique is that it's a relatively specific cancer marker, but it's not cancer type specific. So you'll see other companies working in this area and researchers where you go for one target. Just to take one example, PSMA, it's called prostate specific membrane antigen. And as you can hear in the word, if you develop a technology for that, you are confined to prostate cancer. But UPAR is a general aggressiveness marker. It's actually a cause of the aggressiveness. It's the system that breaks down surrounding tissue. And that means when we develop something, it's broadly applicable across cancer types. And this is also why we have a quite unique pipeline of cancers we work into. And Ulrik mentioned that there have been, on the investigator-initiated side, a lot of different cancer indication, and it's actually more than we show here. But what we show here are the 4 indications we are working with right now. And that is, as you have known for a long time, brain cancer and prostate cancer. I will come a little bit back to those 2 cases and why we are taking these as step 1. But now we also added neuroendocrine tumors and head and neck cancer. And the reason for that is that phase 2 studies were completed there that's shown very promising results, and therefore it's worth also pursuing these. You will also see that there is you trace and you treat, so there's this companion diagnostic, this theranostic pair. However, in prostate cancer, due to other possibilities of treatment, we are mainly going for the imaging part, and I come back to that. But in the other ones, we are going for both things. And we say that within this area, within concept of theranostics with radioactivity, we are not aware of any other technology being so broadly tested, and it's even more cancers that is shown up here. Yeah. And now just for the 2 main indications, the 2 indications we will move into phase 3 studies. All these different indications are showed here, and additional indications have passed through on the imaging side, phase 2 studies. But on 2 of the indications we are going as a first step for the phase 3 trials with imaging, and that is in glioblastoma and in prostate cancer. Glioblastoma is an extremely aggressive brain cancer, and it's fair to say there's a real unmet need. For 15 years, nothing on the prognosis has changed. We are treating today just as we did 15 years ago, and no new therapies have been working. I come back to that, why we then believe that we can actually do something that is better. 30,000 cases, 65,000 brain cancer cases in the US and EU. Half of them are this highly aggressive type. 10% of these cancers are in children. And of course, there's even a larger gain if you can make something that can cure these patients. Radiation therapy external is already standard. And why is this important? We don't have to convince physicians about you have to irradiate these tumors. We merely have to say, but you have to do it in a more efficient and more gentle way. So we are moving it from external to internal radiation therapy. I come back to that. As I said, poor prognosis. Median survival, half will be dead after 14 months, and 5-year survival, there will only be 1 in 20 patients left. So definitely room for improvement. Yeah, and if you go to the next. And what we do here is that there are already scanned a lot of patients in the academic study on imaging. This is just one patient that is shown up here. And this will then move, once that is finalized, into the phase 3 study, which we will sponsor from Curasight. The nice thing about imaging and therapy is, as I said, if you can see it, you can treat it, because it's the same compound. So even though we are working preclinically still in the therapeutic part, the imaging tells us, will this work? Because what this is, and this is the brain cancer showed on an MRI, and this is the uptake. When it's red, there's a lot of uptake of our imaging ligand, that is uTRACE. But it also exactly predicts how the radiation will be distributed, because it's just a different version with harmful radiation. So we can see in these studies that it gets in there, there's a high uptake, and therefore therapy is likely to work. And again, remember, what we send in there as a therapy is radiation, and radiation is already used just from an external, just in an external way. And if you take the next slide, then why was there a 30% year-to-year growth in this market? This is because this is the new black within medicine. 60% of all patients today in cancer will receive radiation therapy sooner or later. So radiation therapy has come to stay. But the problem is that when you irradiate from the outside, you basically go through a lot of healthy tissue, and then you try to accumulate in the tumor. If you inject your radiation therapy, and that is how our radiation therapy works, it's a compound, you inject it, it seeks out the cancer cells, and then it's excreted from the rest of the body, and then it works there. Even if there's only a single cell or a small metastasis nobody knew was there, it will be irradiated. So it's injectable radiation therapy. The game-changing thing about that is that it seeks out all places with cancer. Today, if you have disseminated disease that is spread, there's no way you can be irradiated externally, because the radiation burden to healthy tissue would be so high that it would be a no-go from the beginning. This is also, and if you take the next slide, and in brain cancer, this is how it looks schematically. You do external radiation therapy from the outside, then you get most in the tumor, but you get a lot of radiation in the rest. It's actually radiation of healthy tissue that normally limits how much radiation you can deliver. It's dose limiting, because now you are making harmful effects on healthy tissue. If you have something that seeks out the tumor, it's much more concentrated there. This is basically a drawing of what I showed you on the what is see is what you treat image a moment ago. But there's another trick about this. There is known, in particular in brain cancer, to be small islets of cancer tissue embedded around the surroundings. But they are so small that you cannot see them. They are not showing out an MRI. MRI doesn't have that sensitivity or resolution. So we know from pathology that there are small islands here. Here you have to plan after what you can see on the MRI. So you are chasing something you don't know is there. Here we don't care. It can be there, there, and there. We know that we inject something that seeks out the cancer cells. So it also goes to the non-identified islands. And this is the very reason why we believe, in particular in brain cancer, it will be game-changing, because that's the exact reason why this tumor always comes back. Even though you do radiation, you do surgery, because you're not removing that. And you, in the brain, of course, you cannot just remove a lot, because then you cannot speak or cannot walk or cannot do a lot of things. Yeah. If you take the next slide. So this is the typical concept, and also the concept we will pursue in head and neck and neuroendocrine tumor therapy and imaging, and they work as a pair. In prostate cancer, we will take advantage of, and I should say, as UPAR is a marker of the aggressiveness, by chasing the UPAR-positive cells, we will irradiate. The more aggressive they are, the more UPAR they have, and the more radiation dose they will get. So we get an intelligent distribution of the radiation within the tumor. In prostate cancer, we will utilize that UPAR is an aggressiveness marker to make a non-invasive biopsy. As you know, when I went to medical school, it was always said, more people die with than of prostate cancer. And that is totally correct. The problem is if you're not the one that died with, but of, then you are a little bit unhappy. So you have to detect all those with relatively benign disease. And because it's difficult, today there's an immense overtreatment. So at least 80% of prostates that are removed unnecessary. they could have stayed there and the disease would never have spread. But of course, better safe than sorry, and that's why you overtreat. If you could have something that is reliable, which we don't have today, then you could circumvent that. And this is exactly what we want to move from the invasive biopsies. And by the way, 70% of patients that get the prostate gland removed get some degree of impotence or urinary incontinence. So it's better safe than sorry, but it's still not fun getting it removed if you could have avoided it. And the patients, of course, will never know. They thought, oh, thank God, I got rid of my cancer. But the truth is, 80% of those would never have experienced spread of the cancer. And instead of taking biopsies that are unreliable with Gleason score, we want to move this into an image readout, which is more reliable. As a first step, we will demonstrate that it can replace safely the biopsies. And then as a second step, of course, we will show that it's even better. Why is it better? When you take biopsies, you have the ability, or you very often miss the most aggressive part of the tumor. This is the reason why the readout is unreliable, and this is the reason why we overtreat, because we don't trust it. I can mention that if with small tumors that are identified, Gleason scored, there was a big study showing 3 months later they were re-biopsied, and it was then the readout was that 20% no longer had cancer. Of course they had cancer, but the biopsies just missed it the second time. Admittedly, these were relatively small cancers. When you do imaging, you are not missing anything because you do whole body imaging. So you look at the whole volume. It's not where you did put in your needle. And therefore it has the potential to circumvent what we call sampling error, and therefore be more reliable, and therefore be more trustworthy, and saving patients of unnecessary prostatectomy, aggressive therapy that is hampered by side effects. So this is the other track we are pursuing as a first step into a phase 3 study.
Yes, and how do we get the technology to the market? This is just to give you an insight of the strategy we're also dealing with as a part of seeking new funding. In certain times, we are well funded right now, but we also are looking for potential partnerships for licensing agreement within the different indications. And just to show you also why the market is expected to grow rapidly is really that the big pharma is stepping into this market. And in 2018, Novartis acquired 2 companies, AAA, Advanced Accelerator Application. They acquired this company for $3.9 billion just for one single indication within neuroendocrine tumor. And in the same year, they also acquired Endosight within another indication for around $2.1 billion. So Novartis is really showing the way within this path also. And this is also what we see as one of our partners. I will not point one out of that yet, it's too early, but we are well connected with most of the companies. So what could we look into the rest of this year? Right now is the milestones we have highlighted here is we expect by the end of this half year to at least have some results from the phase 2 study in glioblastoma brain cancer in uTRACE. Furthermore, we expect, and the rest of the 2022, that we will have the trial readout for the uTREAT, which is within the treatment of brain cancer. And furthermore, we will also want to initiate the 2 new additional indications, neuroendocrine tumors and also head and neck cancer. We also want to pursue that within uTREAT, besides uTRACE also. And then we also have starting up the regulatory work to start up the phase 3 studies, both in prostate cancer and also in brain cancer. But that will first be in the beginning of 2023, expectedly. This is just to give you your idea of the board of directors, very competent, and recently Kirsten Dreyer stepped in June last year, very experienced person within developed biotech companies, and she was the co-founder of Symphogen and raised around 2.3 billion Danish crown during her assessment in Symphogen. And then we're also working on right now to increase the organization, also to strengthen it. And recently, Hanne Damgaard Jensen stepped in as Chief Development Officer. She was actually the employee number 4 of Genmab, has been building up the research development department in Genmab. And we are very pleased about that. She also will want to be part of Curasight going forward. Yes, that was the presentation.
Okay, so time for questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
So,
is your solution uTrace similar to FluoGuide's FG001 that was presented earlier?
yeah, that's a good question. Yes and no. The target is the same, and it's no secret that I'm also a co-founder of FluoGuide. So the target is used in FluoGuide for improving surgery, and we are using it for improving via radiotherapy. And you can say, if you look at cancer therapy, it's always a multi-modality approach in the way that the pillars really are radiation therapy, chemotherapy, surgery. You always use surgery if you want to really be apart from a few cancers. Normally, if you want to cure, you also need the surgery, and then the immune oncology and other things. So it's the same target, and it's intelligent in the same way because the cancer lights up in FluoGuide, and we can use that as a handle for doing the radiation therapy. So the target is the same, but the technologies are totally different, and they are in different areas of the way you approach cancer. But in theory, if everything is successful, you can see in years to come that first the patients will be undergo surgery and the FluoGuide technology will be used, and then afterwards the radiation therapy will be delivered as a uTreat.
For how long does your existing funds last?
Right now, we have expanded the strategy of the 2 additional indications. So that will be in, I would say, 12 to 15 months at least. It will last the current funding, but we are well funded right now. It also depends how fast we are pushing forward. So, but it could be more because we also, as I just mentioned, partnerships that will also be part of the strategy. So, who knows?
And there are many indications to follow.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing, to have that luxury that we are not confined to one space. So depending on the bandwidth, of course, we could do things more in parallel.
Yeah.
Is there any regional market that is especially interested in nuclear medicine?
I mean, everybody are interested in this right now. You can see that growth. Of course, the US market is always interesting from a regulatory side. You have one regulatory body. You have a market of the whole of the US. And we know in Europe, yes, we have EMA, but it's still fractionated and it's a different reimbursement system. So US, and also for the feedback, we heard that also earlier today in companies' interaction with FDA. That is also what we plan for the next coming months, to interact with FDA on the design of the phase 3 study, because they are also very known for giving good feedback, and you have one body that you go. So for that reason, a US strategy is a first step strategy.
Yeah.
Could you comment anything about the progress of the glioblastoma uTreat study?
Yeah, I can take that. We also had COVID in Copenhagen, and it's an investigator-initiated trial, so a lot of things were put on hold. So for that reason, the inclusion has been delayed. But as I'm informed, and it is an investigator-initiated trial, not sponsored by Curasight, we expect that the patient could be included until summer, and then hopefully data will be reported short thereafter.
Ulrich, Andreas, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.